This week, WB announced that they're taking away Multiversus until next year. What are you going to do with that season pass and the DLC you bought until then? The Last of Us Part 1 PC port is a buggy mess. Then, Bobby Kotick shames Sony in the most backhanded, fun way in an open letter. Super Mario 64 speedruns have been perfected. Josh shares his thoughts on Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, and Nick, Russ, and I talk about our experiences playing the indie game Necesse.
Nick here, and I have it on very respectable accounts that there is no need to do it twice.
Hi, I'm Josh, and cheese should never be pasteurized.
My name is Andy, and this is Video Game Tango. Welcome back.
I didn't.
We're live!
Yeah, I thought we were canceled.
Look at us.
Eureka.
Dude, so
For
those that don't know, I did let people know on social media and whatnot, but we didn't have like an official, audio or video release about it. We've been gone for 4 weeks now. We missed an entire month of gaming news, which is fine because it was kind of a dead month as far as gaming news goes. A little bit happened, but
a release here, a sale there, but,
We're going to catch up a little bit on that, but our previous mixer died, and you may be thinking like, well, I don't know, figure something else out. You do 4 microphones without a mixer because that's difficult. Anyways, we have a new one, new and improved. It can do
even more LEDs.
It's got so many LEDs, and it can make sounds that our old one could, but it can also do things.
Just saying, an atmospheric river kept this from getting here.
Yeah.
So if you want to blame anybody, blame God.
Yeah, what did they call the first one? Something bomb, the bomb cyclone?
Yeah.
Yeah, bomb cyclones.
Jesus.
Yeah, so shitloads of weather prevented this thing from arriving on time. It was a whole thing.
Our delivery driver fought a frost giant.
Probably multiple. So yeah, it took us a little while to get this back up and running, but we are back for our regularly scheduled 8 to 9 p.m.-ish live streams with our
Been live for
always on time Friday releases of both the audio portion and the video portion of the podcast. Yeah, we're back.
Our behind the scenes
Hello,
tech
gentlemen.
team works tirelessly to make sure that release happens.
Yes, I do.
It's an entire cast of well-paid interns. No, it's just
you
Andy.
guys get paid? What the fuck? Yeah. So not only do we have the new mixer, I am also working on a whole new layout. It's going to be
Snazzy
hopefully good
and modern.
I'm a bit critical on my own work, but we do have a whole new layout coming. It's going to come with some neat new features. I'm really excited for it.
Everybody loves features.
Hopefully I can get some more chat interaction going on in it. I've made space for that in the new arrangement and layout.
Synergy.
Synergy.
Graph it.
But you know what this podcast is about? It's about video games.
Oh,
So let's talk about those.
yes.
First up in the news, Warner Brothers is shutting down Multiversus, claiming the open beta is over. So Multiversus has been out for a little while now, mid 2023 or 2022 rather, for its open beta, and people have been playing it quite a bit.
Haven't they released like seasons?
They've released
like
there's been season passes, DLC purchase options. There was even a professional tournament with a paid prize for the beta.
Oh my. August
feel
9th,
like-
2022.
Yeah.
I feel like you're using the word beta a lot here. Like that's going to be
Well, that's what they called it.
Yeah, but it's going to be very important for a reason here.
So they're pulling it. You will no longer be able to play Multiversus as it was. During this downtime, Multiversus will not be accessible online, but you'll still have limited offline access, allowing for local matches and the in-game training mode. Warner Brothers says the open beta has been an important learning opportunity for us and a stepping stone to the next phase. So it's getting a reworked progression system and other updates during downtime. The game will go offline on the 25th of June. So that's 2 months from now, with plans to re-release in early 2024.
What a gap. I mean, was that 6-7 months?
Yeah.
The game's been out, which is a long time for AAA games.
Yeah.
Right. And they're going to take it down for a year?
I mean,
Like 7-8 months, it looks like probably. Because
early 2024 is vague, but
it is vague.
you
but
can assume probably Q1.
You can assume Q1 when they say early.
That could be March.
Could
It
be.
could be
It's
March.
now. That's a year.
Could be
Yeah,
a
but
year.
it's not going down till June, which is still a few months away.
Oh, okay. So
So maybe 10 months of downtime.
yeah, it could be upwards of a year, definitely,
Yeah.
towards a year, but probably 7-8 months. But that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If you like where it's at and it needs a little fine tuning, isn't that what patches and updates
don't think they like where it's at.
are for?
But
Okay, well, I mean,
PR speaking that article is so vague. I don't
Yeah,
know
that's
what
true.
the problem
Yeah.
is. I haven't been following. I'm not a.
Yeah, no, I mean, dude, if I'm gonna
Person
play a
who's playing
brawler game, I'm gonna play Super Smash Bros. Sorry, I just there's too much legacy and nostalgia there for me. But like Versus was doing well. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't really follow it after the launch.
I mean, dude, it had Shaggy. I mean, so it was doing well.
So it was doing
you know?
well, obviously.
You know?
No, yeah. By all accounts, it seems like the game was doing really well. They don't have published stats on concurrent players or anything like that, but based on the news that I've seen, Multiversus was doing really well. Seemed like most reviewers were enjoying the game. Had some balancing issues here and there, but they were also releasing new characters like all the time. So you're always going to have little balancing issues when it comes to like releasing new characters to an already established roster. So that kind of thing is to be expected in a brawler type game like this.
Well, DLCs and season passes and outfits, like, dude, there's people who invested like
Real money,
into this,
yeah.
real money into this, and now you're just not getting your stuff for upwards of a year, maybe.
Yeah.
Welcome to Games as a Service. So it could be something that the net code or underlying structure of the game or the way the user interface or matchmaking or teams or clans work,
Yeah.
that they need to rework it. And that's not something where they can leave a live branch of the code up and running, because they need to do some like deep overhaul of the fundamental code.
Yeah,
right?
but I mean, at the same time, like it's games as a service, so they don't they can work on the next iteration without making it go live, right? So
And that's my question is then, like, if they're making such a fundamental change, the game's going to need to be taken down for 6 months to a year.
yeah,
Like, was it really failing that hard? Or is it something more like they realized that their games as a service where they nickel and dime you for characters and skins and cosmetics wasn't performing well enough? So
I honestly think they just took the money and ran. Like they were probably looking at sometime like a 2024 release and saw an opportunity to make some money in the meantime.
Yeah.
Right. I really think that's probably what happened there.
I think there's a small chance and likely possibility it just doesn't come back.
That is a possibility. Games get canceled all the time.
They made their money on all their fucking season passes and skins and battle passes, and it's WB. They don't have the greatest record.
Yes.
Recently, not super.
So, yeah, it's a bit of a shame. My nephew was really liking the game. I played it with him a few times, but I mean, at least we got another couple months of playing it.
Yeah, another couple months, and hopefully that rounds out the duration of a like an appropriate duration for a season, because people have already purchased a season pass. So one hopes that you get enough time in a season pass before the game just goes away for a while, before it's closeted for nearly a year. But yeah, I mean, it's a shitty rug pull.
Yeah, dude, I'd be a little pissed if, like, for example, the game I buy season passes for all the time, Apex, was just like, oh, okay, hey guys, sorry, we're just going away for 8 months. We got to figure some shit out.
I mean, this is a lesson you learn as a modern day gamer, that if you're going to give money to a games as a service game, then you should expect at any time to not be able to play it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's going to happen. It's going to happen to you at some point in your gaming career if you do it. And you just gotta, if you're going to pay the money, then that's on you. And just accept you get to enjoy it while you can.
Yeah. Well, talking about shitty dev teams and probably should have come out in 2024. Nick, you've got some news for us.
And which one is this?
That's Last of Us.
Last of Us. Wasn't aware I was heading this one, but
Oh.
I do know a little bit about it. So Last of Us port to PC was headed by Iron Galaxy, one of Sony's porting development studios. And it's hot garbage, much like their last few ports. I don't remember which ones they were off the top of my head, but they do not have a good track record. Pretty much Steam reviews and other things are tearing into this. I watched a clip the other day. It's minor, but it was amusing. In the middle of a cutscene, all the characters just became soaking wet. Like, okay.
Y'all wet?
That's a minor bug and funny if it's the only one. But besides that, stuttering and frame rate issues and crashes and all this stuff.
Shaders taking a ridiculously long time to load up at the beginning of initial startup has been another complaint. One that Naughty Dog, addressed actually ones, in their Twitter was the shaders one. And that's just like, honestly, dude, that's just really disappointing because I was straight up going to buy this game on Friday.
Yeah, we were excited about it.
I was going to pay full price for a decade old game.
Mm-hmm. I saw the reviews coming out.
I'm questioning it because of the 10,000 reviews. They're mostly negative on Steam right now.
Yeah.
So
never a good thing.
They did the ports for the Batman games, the Arkham games, to PC, and those were a fucking hot mess.
Hot
Yeah.
garbage.
Deleting your registry early on, deleting all of your saves, including cloud saves from Steam. Ruining your fucking computer was what the Arkham games did at launch. So they don't have the best track record. I was checking to see because I thought they might have done the San Andreas port, but I can't see that here. I don't
Some
think
of the third game they did shoddy on, but I mean, Sony also has Nixes and Bluepoint, which I believe Bluepoint was the ones who did the original Dark Souls remastered port, which, I mean, diehard fans aside, pissed that they changed minor things, was a fantastic port from everything I gathered. And someone on Reddit saying, like, they keep using Iron Galaxy to make these ports. Something's telling me they're trying to make bad games on purpose so that people will buy PlayStation 5s to play the game.
That's hard to say because, like, Horizon's port to PC was awesome.
But they ported it.
God of War was really good.
So I don't remember the studios that ported it. God of War was also an excellent port. So it's like, so they're giving good games to good dev teams to port. Like, I don't understand.
So that port was handled by Guerrilla Games and Virtuos. So the question is, why do they keep using Iron Galaxy?
Yeah.
I think this is the third time now that they've released a bad port. And maybe they just have so much money they don't care because people will buy it anyways because of the hype of the TV show.
Yeah.
Right. But they're like, knock this out as fast as you can. We want it to be able to launch. Don't worry about bugs and crashes. We just need to like rake in what little money we can based off the hype of the show. That's going to be my guess.
That said, they have also done good ports. Like Iron Galaxy did Overwatch for the Switch, Spyro to PC, Diablo 3 to the Switch. They did Crash Bandicoot to PC to the Steam port. That was bad.
I haven't played any of those.
Fortnite on the PS4, Conan Exiles, who cares? That was a bad game. Skyrim, they did like it looks like multiple ports for
I've ported
Skyrim.
Skyrim.
Right. Yeah, I know at this point. They also made Killer Instinct, the latest version of Killer Instinct. That was actually really fun. I enjoyed the shit out of that when the Xbox One first came out.
That's fair, but it's one thing to make a game, it's another to port it.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
But I mean they do have a track record. I don't know. It's wildly good or wildly bad. Like the Arkham game's wildly bad. While, Diablo 3 to the Switch, people were saying like this is the definitive way to play Diablo 3 because now you have Diablo 3 mobile and it works great. So, kind of weird. They seem to have like a really back and forth track record here.
Inconsistent.
Yes, very inconsistent. But it seems like either wildly good or wildly bad. There doesn't really seem to be much in between as far as Iron Galaxy goes. From the reputation of the games that I know did well or poorly for their respective ports. That said, it looks like for the most part they port to console from PC rather than the other way around. So there could be weird hiccups that we don't understand from that, and maybe they're just not the best people to do it because clearly that seems to be the case.
Well, Sony stopped using them.
Oh, they
there
did.
You go.
Oh,
No. I mean, like, I'm telling
that was like
them.
a call to action. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because they watch this podcast. Right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Mr. Sony is watching this as we speak.
John Sony.
Yeah. Well, speaking of John Sony,
I was going to say, speaking of John Sony, them and Eric Microsoft are currently in a tussle over Bobby Activision. Oh my God, that's just, okay, we went too far. But no, seriously, it's been a talking point for on the cast a couple of times. And if you're in tech news, we're talking about the Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquison. Boy, God, that was a mouthful.
You're preaching to the choir, because the amount of times I've had to say that, boy, oh boy.
So, I mean, we have in this week, we had video games coming to the forefront of the House with some congressmen talking about Japan's business practices in video gaming as a whole. And then yesterday, Bobby Kotick went ahead and released an open letter both to Activision and then to the whole internet as a whole. Now, I get a lot of the CEOs, they're saying a lot of the same things over and over and over again. That similar message, especially from Kotick and Microsoft, has been made several times. There are thoughtful concessions, generous deals being made, remedies to address all the regulators' concerns. So in this letter that Bobby penned here, so I'm gonna paraphrase part of it here. The good news is regulators who initially had concerns about console competition are starting to better understand the industry. The data and evidence Microsoft has been presenting are tilting the scale. You may have seen statements from Sony, including the argument that if this deal goes through, Microsoft could release deliberately buggy versions of our games. Weird. How we just got a deliberately buggy version on PC, not deliberately, but seemingly deliberately buggy version on a PC. So they're calling that out right off the bat there, right? We all know, passionate players would be the first to hold Microsoft accountable for keeping the promises of content and quality parity. And all of us who work so hard to deliver the best games in our industry care too deeply about our players to ever launch subpar versions of our games. Sony has even admitted that they don't actually care. They're not actually concerned about the Call of Duty agreement. They would just like to prevent the merger from happening. This is obviously disappointing behavior, given an almost 30-year history and long-term relationship. So PlayStation players know we will continue to deliver the best games possible on Sony platforms, as we have since the launch of Sony PlayStation. Now, that's all well and good from Bobby Kotick, because, I mean, honestly, fuck that guy. I literally stopped caring about anything he had to say when he called his secretary and threatened to kill her. So he can take a road of getting fucked. There are some fair points there. I mean, if anybody else had said it, I'd be like, this would be a wonderful rallying statement. But some of the points are there. Like, Sony doesn't even care about the one thing that they've been making the huge deal about. They don't care. It's really just to stop it up.
No, honestly, he raises good points in that it wouldn't behoove Activision Blizzard or Microsoft in the case that they were to acquire Activision Blizzard to deliver buggy games to Sony just out of spite or whatever, right? Because that impacts their sales. At the end of the day, they look at their bottom line, and that is sales. So, if you were suddenly to exclude one platform by making a buggy trash of a game or a buggy mess of a game, especially the dominant platform in the console space, that would be silly and would negatively impact your profits. And they're of course not going to do that. And that's what he's saying, is it doesn't make sense that we would do something malign like that, and especially to our user base. Yeah. He also, in a way, he acknowledges that the users of their software are smarter than that, right? Like they're not going to look at a buggy mess of a game and call it okay at the end of the day. He says that it will impact sales.
It's also pandering.
Oh, 100%.
The passionate players that will tell them when their game's bad make up like 5% of their sales.
Right. Yeah.
95% of people play Call of Duty. don't even know this acquisition is happening.
Yeah.
They buy it once a year and they play it.
Right.
Right.
I mean, they might begin to look into it if Call of Duty becomes a buggy mess on PlayStation, right? But yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah,
There's
but then they've already
certainly
bought it.
pandering. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Now there's certainly pandering going on there. But another good point that he makes is that Sony has been outspoken about, at this point, they're just trying to get in the way of the merger.
Yeah.
They just don't want it.
They just don't want it to happen, and they're pulling out all the stops. So they're trying to accuse Activision Blizzard and Microsoft now of just doing bad business for the sake of doing bad business, which that wouldn't behoove them. It doesn't. There's no logic there.
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, honestly, dude, this has been like a hair pulling, eye scratching, nard kicking kind of fucking fight.
Yeah.
Like Microsoft was fucking auditing like business, like the executives of Sony trying, like getting their, what they've been doing the last 5 years. What are their numbers? So, I mean, they have been on both sides playing dirty here. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're all billionaires. These are all $1 billion companies. It's all more money than any
Way
of us
up above us
can fucking fathom. But it does seem at this point, Sony's just standing in the way to stand in the way.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, if you wanted to buy Activision Blizzard, then you should have offered more money, I guess. I don't like that's,
Yeah,
that,
maybe.
I feel like that's
on you.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: is Sony has been scooping up studios as fast as they can during this acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, no, okay, well, if you guys are going to do it, we're going to buy everybody else, right?
Little projection. Much.
Yeah, just a little bit. $8 billion to pick up Bungie. Sony now owns Bungie, and they're like, we have the studio that you guys didn't want anymore.
Dude, owning Bungie in this day and age is like a flex.
Owning Bungie
Like,
in this day and
how
age,
cringe.
it's a fucking bungle.
Right?
They're no longer Bungie.
Oh, you
they're
bought
bungle.
Bungie to show off?
Well, then nobody
Cool.
cares. They don't make Halo anymore, bro.
Yeah.
No, but I guess Destiny 2 isn't going to be in your fucking Blizzard launcher for too much longer. Maybe. Oh, God. Who knows? But yeah, no, there's some petty bullshit going on. Something interesting though that I happened upon while I was going through the Activision Blizzard stuff recently was Bobby Kotick has really been outspoken against the Japanese gaming community or the business. Because he is addressing U.S. regulators, and he's talking about how essentially, outside of SCEA or Sony Computer Entertainment of America, they're not the dominant platform in Japan necessarily. They're huge in Japan, but Nintendo is also massive in Japan, and nobody's talking about Nintendo in any of these arguments here. So he is starting to drag Nintendo into it as well a little bit, in that. He's talking about how not only does Sony and Nintendo have exclusive titles of their own and continue to acquire studios, but they also have country exclusive games.
Yeah.
So Japanese exclusive games. So he's tying that in there as well. And it's interesting because now we have regulators talking about like whether we should be having dealings with Japanese game companies at all. Which I don't think they're going to get touched, but
but
it's bringing it to the conversation, which is
it is raising the point. And when you get, I mean, we have plenty of things that our Congress people could be talking about, but they're talking about video games for right now. Some of them are. So anytime Congress is talking about it, that's kind of something to look at. It's like, what the okay.
No, it's not unimportant considering they are doing their job right now. That's a nice thing. They are looking into whether this would be a monopolization. I mean, they should have done that better in a lot of other circumstances. They seem to be really nailing down the gaming corner.
Picking and choosing what they care about, but
for sure, as far as acquisition goes. But yeah, it's interesting that video games are kind of taking the forefront of our regulators' minds. It's different. It's different. You never thought we'd be getting serious conversations about video games in Congress unless it was the latest Grand Theft Auto, and children on children violence.
Like a satanic panic sort of a kind of a deal,
Seems like a lot of what he's doing is trying to explain to the FTC, the European Commission, and some of these other acronyms that they don't really understand how the video game industry is currently working. He's going on to define things as like how it works in Asia, more specifically China and in Japan, with Tencent and Byteforce and Nintendo and Sony and protected markets and all that. And I'm sure he knows his shit, right? Because the first thing he points out is like phones. Phones are the biggest gaming market. Yeah. Like the consoles and PCs don't even come close.
Not even.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Just 10, 15 years ago, middle class to lower class families buying consoles was the thing, and that's not the case anymore.
And that only became the thing
with cheap smartphones.
Well, I mean, but before the advent of smartphones, buying consoles, like the console market didn't really get to go huge. Like kids had video game consoles, sure, but you had your Nintendo, right? PlayStation 2, though, you started to actually see consoles in like every living room. Simply because at the time the PS2 was the cheapest way to get a DVD player in the house, right? So we saw a huge expansion in gaming in the PS2, and I'm going on a tangent, but that's where we saw the explosive growth that brings us to where we are today.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was one of the times it was like you could have a PlayStation 2, and that could be the corner piece of your living room entertainment,
Yeah.
So, like, I don't need a stereo because I just pop in CD and listen to music on my PlayStation, and I just watch a movie on my PlayStation, and
Yeah. So, Russ brings up a good point. He says, it's always bizarre when the arguments are over video games and TikTok when so many other companies are allowed to run rampant. We could use another robust area of antitrust, but the scrutiny should be focused elsewhere. Yeah, that's 100% true.
We have 6 major airlines that all agree on what the prices should be for us to travel. We have 5 major train companies that have daily fucking derailments, and entire communities are fucking displaced. Like...
There's more important things to be worried about.
Yeah, no fucking shit. There are 3 people who sell groceries in this entire fucking country. Mm-hmm. It's fucking Walmart, Costco, and the Fred Meyer conglomerate.
Yep.
But sure, I mean, I get it. It is a big deal. It's a lot of money. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's because of how much money is being pumped into this industry.
Yeah.
It's the dollar amount that matters here. Because we talked about this privately and not on the podcast.
There's 4 companies that make fucking movies.
Yeah, but we talked about
in America.
But we talked about you and I have had this conversation a few times about the Kroger buying Safeway. That acquisition happened during the Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition, and you look at that and you say that's fucking insane. And you look at something that is food, thinking, okay, that's got to be a huge market. But it's obvious that the regulators are only looking at transaction, like the spending per transaction, because that was a $13 billion acquisition.
Yeah, somewhere between 10 and $20 billion or something like that.
Versus 69. So it's clear that they're just looking at total dollar amounts, and that's what's on their mind, not necessarily the best thing for the people.
But DuPont or Dow Chemicals being bought up, like that you wouldn't even fucking know about it unless you looked for it.
Right. Yeah.
And it was bought for nearly this much. Not as much, but nearly this much.
DuPont Chemical was bought for like 71.
Oh, okay. So just a little over. So it's like, I mean, but then, chat raises, I mean, if we're talking about, again, financial institutions, good God, fucking Merrill Lynch, B of A, Chase, fuck our economy bank,
Yeah.
I bank at FAF.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fuck our finances.
Fuck our finances.
FAFU.
Well, without getting too much further in the politics weeds.
Time stuff.
Nick.
Yes.
You want to talk about a very special speed run?
I do. It is worthy of mentioning. The speedrunning community has been brought up a few times on this cast because it is eclectic and exotic and rare, much like a Sasquatch in space. If you're not really big into gaming, you might have heard of speedrunning. And if you're into gaming, you might know a little bit about it. But it's such like a tight-knit, defined community of just hyper-accelerated, amazing people that probably break the laws of reality, that I do my best to keep up on it. A handful of YouTubers that do highlights and whatnot. And we had something that I'm going to have a hard time really implying how crazy this is, but I will do my best. Super Mario 64 is one of the biggest, most sped run games there are. And there are multiple categories, of which are, I believe, 0, 1, 16, and 120 star categories. So getting 0 stars and being in the game, getting 1, getting 16, getting 120. The ones below 120 usually involve glitches and whatnot, right? Because you normally can't beat the game.
Because there's progression.
If you know anything about speedrunning, it's that it goes through cycles. You'll have like any given speedrun for a game might be like, okay, we beat this game in 20 minutes. And then for a few years, someone gets 19 minutes and 50 seconds, and someone gets 19 minutes and 47 seconds. And then a few years later, new techniques and methods are found out that cut like a minute off the time.
Yeah.
Right. And now suddenly that's the new method. Right. So the current methodology is in any game, discussed in the speedrunning community. Here are the newest glitches we found. Some of those take 15, 20 years to find. And in games like this, Mario 64 is ancient, right?
Yeah, it's like 25, 26 years old probably.
Yeah. So they're getting to the edge of like what glitches are possible.
Yeah.
Right. But every once in a while you do get something new. What's crazy about this guy, Green Suigi, like Green Luigi, but with an S. He's young. I'm just given by the feed I can see of him. He recently did something amazing, I believe, in the 1-star category. So getting 1 star and then glitching your way to the end. He held second place already, and then he managed to break the 7-minute barrier by like a full 5 seconds or something. Now, there are a lot of speedrun categories in games where you get the person at the top because they did everything flawlessly except for like 1% of the run.
Yeah.
It is almost entirely absent from speedrunning that a given world record doesn't have at least one mistake. That mistake might only cost you 1 second, but you only made one mistake, whereas the other people made 2 or 3 or 4, and they're 4, 5, 10 seconds behind you. Green Suigi managed to do a 1 star essentially with no mistakes. He beat his own second place record by a full like 5, 10, 15 seconds. I think it was. It's like a sub 7-minute run for Mario. And then very shortly thereafter went on to do a full 16-star run with no mistakes. So this isn't a tool-assisted speedrun. It's not a computer playing the game. A computer could do things faster. But the thing is that when you're doing these runs, you're human, right? You've practiced the first half of the run a million times, and the second half maybe only a couple thousand, right? So the sweats start happening. This run's going well. You start getting nervous. That didn't happen. And this amazing, beautiful person managed to pull off what amounts to a no-mistake Mario speedrun, which is important because it means it might never be topped.
Yeah, unless there is a new meta discovered for speedrun community, it can't be topped.
So Green Suigi, who has now done 2 what amounts to flawless runs in 2 of the biggest categories, is attempting to do the rest. And he's going to have what essentially amounts to a full house. He's going to hit all the major Super Mario 64 categories. I think he's attempting not the biggest one yet, not the 120 star one. Cause like to do like, I imagine that's probably multiple hours.
Yeah.
Like an hour or 2.
I'm sure.
Like no one can expect a human to do an hour or 2 hour long speed run without mistakes. Because every jump, every bounce, every attack has a potential for messing up. Right. And even it might not sound like much, but to do a 14-minute speed run without a single mistake, watching him play through this, it is so impressive.
Yeah.
And the most beautiful thing is when he finishes it
over here on this.
Yeah, they got a heart rate counter. When he finishes, he loses his shit in only the way that like a 17, 18-year-old kid can do. And it is so amazing to watch him just lose it. But yeah, it's this might be it. He's actually probably done it. I don't see it being topped again unless they find some new strategy, which ever so rarely happens in games. But just
unless
shouts out.
Unless it's Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they do stuff. I mean, we've talked about the half A press in Mario, and the parallel dimensions and all that. These kinds of things can be found. But we're nearing the end for this game. It's been out for like 20 years now, if not longer.
I think Mario 64 was 96.
So yeah, even longer. But yeah, just hats off. It's impressive to do any speed run flawlessly, let alone one that's almost, quarter of an hour long.
Yeah.
It's intense. So 07 to you, sir.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Mario 64 speedrun fan, but I do watch a lot of Ocarina of Time speedruns.
Yeah.
ZFG in particular, he's so good he holds almost all the world records. The guy is insane. At this point now, just for the sake of content, and so he can do something new every day, he's been streaming almost every day. Ocarina of Time speed runs using a randomizer.
Yeah,
so,
I think you were telling us about that.
Man. So it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
He sets the parameters of the randomizers, but yeah, he switches it up quite frequently, and he's even come out with a few speed run metas. So metas that he creates the rules, and they do speed run competitions based on that with prizes involved. So, it's awesome. Getting into a speed running community is fun. You should really check them out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. After that, Josh, let's talk about games that we've been playing.
Oh, so recently the Steam Spring Sale went on, and I went ahead and picked myself up the Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy game.
Excuse me for a moment.
No, this was developed by Eidos. Boy, I was wrong on both fronts. Eidos Montreal was the dev, and it was published by Eidos Interactive. This bad boy is a third-person action-adventure game, and it's an original story, and it puts you in as your favorite ragtag superheroes protecting the galaxy. So this was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun playing the game. Now, there were a lot of things that I liked about it. Visually, it was very pleasing, right on par with the Spider-Man games. So y'all, if you've played the Spider-Man games, you liked how those looked, how those kind of how the button kind of things, like if you're watching, you just saw
like
button combos, quick time events happened. You're going to dig Guardians. So that was a lot of fun. The soundtrack, if you're a Guardians fan, especially a new one with the MCU, you know how important that soundtrack is. And let me tell you, fam, it was lit on this soundtrack. It was excellent. I loved it. Plenty of 80s jams. And a lot of the times it was I don't know if it's driven for like, they give you a selection of songs per section or whatever, but a lot of the times it seemed just very poignant, the song choice. And I was like, I wonder if this is happening like organic, like if this is, happening written, or if this is just random luck for me.
Yeah.
I don't actually know that, but it was soundtrack was fucking amazing. So there was good, not great, but good character progression. I honestly would have liked to have seen a little bit more with the powers. And that kind of leads into one of my cons. By the end of the game, combat was very predictable. I had a fairly tight routine that I would go in with, lead in with Groot grabbing people up, Rocket exploding them. And so like I kind of used pairs, and it was predictable and systematic near the end of the game. So that was kind of a bummer. Now, where the game was a lot of fun again was a lot of side characters and unique takes on the characters. So if your only experience with Guardians of the Galaxy is through the MCU, well, you're going to get a little bit of a different take here. These are more closely aligned with their comic book characters. But we got to see a lot of fun characters like Cosmo, the space dog. He's a telekinetic dog and is the best boy. So enough said. We got a different view of Mantis. Mantis is, again, fan favorite from the MCU. She has a much different vibe, different feel here. And a lot of, honestly, the main characters they're quintessentially the same because they're the main characters, but again, a bit different of a vibe. So I really enjoyed that. Story was good. a couple of twists, couple of turns, a few things I didn't see coming. Again, another downside here, though, is it is very, very story driven, super linear. I would have appreciated, at least, especially in the early game, having a few more choices of places where I could have gone and seen a bit more of this version of the galaxy. But it was very A, B, C, D. Here you go. Now I didn't mind that super, I guess, but I would have liked a little more exploration. And then that leads right into the last little bit is it was a little short. If I had bought this at full price, it would have been $60 and I would have gotten about 20 hours, not super short, but I mean, if I could have had a few more choices, this easily could have been a 30-hour game and 0 complaints on time then. And I would have assumed got a few more powers, but it's overall, if you can pick it up, especially on sale, and you're a big fan of comics, this was a fun play. It was, it was fun. Easy to learn mechanics. Like I said, little boring fights near the end, but easy to learn mechanics, good progression, good story.
Yeah, we're also the kind of crowd that learns how to, as quickly as possible, cheese fights. So sometimes we do that to ourselves, you know?
Yeah, again, it could be me. It's just like, oh, this is just the easiest way to handle. Yeah, that could be a thing that I lumped myself into there.
Sure. I mean, it also depends on how linear it was. If you're just using the latest abilities learned and that turns out to be the best, then, you know, maybe there's something to be said there as far as like the quality of combat. But, you know, if that wasn't the case, then, you know, people's experiences are going to differ.
Yeah, definitely. But it was fun.
Do you have much experience with movie tie-in video games?
Not a super.
Having played a smattering of them over the years, you mentioned its linearity. It's, you know, action oriented. That is one of the building blocks of most tie-in games. Is that they're essentially like, we're going to tell either the story of the movie, like when you think like the Lego games, right? Or like we're going to follow the general plot, right? Or they're going to do something very similar. And they very, very, very rarely have the means to branch out and have any kind of effect on the story, right? Because you're essentially just experiencing it.
Yeah.
Right? Which is fine.
Sure.
But it would be nice to see these kinds of games potentially do branch out at times. You know, it's not in their wheelhouse. So I'm not surprised that happened.
So I feel like the Spider-Man games, I'm going to go back because that's, I feel like a pretty good thing to compare this game against is the Spider-Man games. Yeah. In both games, as playing as Parker and Morales, I got to explore New York City. I got to see things in it. And like I had, again, it was a linear story. There's no way to get a surprise secret ending out of either of the Spider-Man games, but I was able to kind of pick in which order I fought some of these dudes. And I was able to, like, time-wise decide it's like, you know, I'm not ready to just kind of push on through. I want to spend a little time just exploring. Like I didn't get to go and check out they gave me a fake option and then it was like, now we're just going to this place.
Okay.
And like, I would have liked it like, hey, are we going to Contraxia or nowhere? And then like maybe go back to that location as story
Just the
happens.
option to pick which one to do first.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just a little more agency. Cause it's, I mean, like I said, it's a good story, but you are really on it for the ride, right? Like,
even if it's like a fake agency, like just the ability to choose which planet you go to.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And that would have, I feel like, extended the time frame out a little bit. Like we could also like go with Jedi, like Jedi Outcast, the
Fallen Order,
the Fallen Order game,
played,
where it's a fairly linear story, but you go back to a couple of planets as you unlock things. It would have been cool to have to go back to a place because I couldn't get in there the first time, or something, you know. And
a lot of people also don't like that.
Oh, okay.
Like for
fair
as
enough.
far as backtracking, a lot of people don't like that. Like that's one of the biggest complaints for the God of War game.
Yeah, I'm saying backtracking would have been like to have to backtrack at a place once wouldn't have been. Yeah, I wouldn't have wanted the whole fucking way.
I see what Josh is saying, and I think you make a fair comparison in the Spider-Man game on the surface because they are both movie tie-in games. But the Spider-Man game has its bones not only in things like GTA and Crackdown, but going as far back as the much maligned Superman 64 game. You know, the bones of those games are, we're giving you a playground to explore in,
Yeah.
right? You think GTA and what was the ripoff, Saints Row? You know, it's like, here's a sandbox, and then we've put some story in the sandbox, so certain places have points of interest and things to do. So the Spider-Man game is, you know, as a game built off that notion. Here's a town, a city, right? You go explore, and we will at times give you story beats, and then eventually the story will take over, and you go do these isolated missions in instance areas. This particular, the format of this game is heavily reminiscent of a lot of movie tie-in games where, like, we just need a linear corridor to shunt the player through like they're on a Disney ride taking pictures, right?
See, I'm all about that.
I did enjoy the ride. I did enjoy the ride.
Dated. I think what Joss is saying and what he's getting at is, like, even if you were on rails, but it's like, okay, the bad guys are on these 3 places. Which planet do we want to hit first? You're going to hit all of them. There's no real gameplay difference in which one you hit first, but it's that kind of soft, false choice that helps, right? Like, oh, I remember this planet from the movie, or I read the comics. I remember this. I want to see how they do that. Those kinds of choices really aren't that hard to implement in a game. Like, all the content needs to be there anyways if you're going to all 3 of these planets, and just giving the player the ability to choose which one.
I get personally, I'm just totally okay with, like, the ultra linearity.
Yeah, it's fine to be okay with it. I just think that they made probably more money if they took the time to put in a little bit of false choice in there.
Yeah, maybe.
Right.
Well, I mean,
you know, if I wanted to watch a movie, I'd watch a movie.
So. I don't know. For me, I couldn't care less about adding any more open world or agency into a game. A lot of the times, it's actually what detracts from a game for me. That's why I can't get into a lot of Western RPGs.
How would you feel if World of Warcraft had you go to specific zones in order every time? You never
got. That would suck, but it's an MMO versus a different experience.
I think they have more similarities than you think, right? Like, if it was single player, like Diablo's a good example of a very linear game where it's rare that you get to make choices in where you go. But those zones were so large, like especially like Diablo 2, that within that zone itself, there were choices you could make. I'm going to go to this part. Oh, there's a town over here. I'm going to go to this part. Oh, that's where like that quest is. You know, in games like this where you're literally like almost on rails, the actual places the players can go is a very one-tracked thing.
I guess at the end of the day, I'm okay with both experiences. Like, yeah, I like the slightly more open world version of Diablo. I like the open world of World of Warcraft, and I like the linearity of something like a Guardians of the Galaxy, where I'm replaying Final Fantasy VII Remake, and that's a ultra linear, even compared to Final Fantasy VII, the original. So you have less choice and agency in the remake than you did in the original. So and I'm enjoying myself. So I just I just chalk it up to different gameplay experiences, and I'm okay with all sides in that regard. There are game types that I don't care for or prefer. It's open world. So hearing that it's an ultra linear story driven game does not detract anything for me personally.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I see, like, what I've been watching here. This looks boring as fuck. If this was what I was shown what the game was, I would never pay $1 for it. But that's just me.
Yeah. We know that we have different opinions of games.
Yeah.
Yeah. You definitely play a lot of games that I don't, and I definitely play a lot of games that you don't.
Thank God there is a variety.
Yeah. That being said, unfortunately, the Steam sale is over, so it is back to its full price of $59.99. Well, let's talk about a game that is on sale right now that we are also playing.
Weenie Hut General. No,
I mean, that's a better name than what it's actually got. So we are playing a game called Necesse.
I believe it's Necesse. If it's something else, it's dumb.
Necesse. At any rate, it's spelled Necesse.
Mm-hmm.
It is a...
It is 70% Terraria.
Yeah.
And then the rest is filled with a little bit of Minecraft and a little bit of top-down roguelike bullet hell stuff.
Yes.
And on top of that, you do RimWorld style colony management.
Yes. I think Let me hear your side. You've played more of it than I have. Like I haven't done any of the RimWorld villager colony stuff yet at all. So I'll let you get your opinion on that. But what are your overall impressions of the game so far?
So my overall impressions of the game is that it's about 40% done, maybe 60% at most. What is there is fine. I feel like it's like solidly about halfway through its development. And because the developer, I believe is just one person, decided to get, player user interface and readability and all these things done first. The game is in a very playable state.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've enjoyed for the most part what I've played of it. The gameplay loop is pretty standard as far as like Terraria goes. You go into a new zone, you get new resources, use those resources to make better versions of the items you have, then fight the boss at the end, which unlocks the ability to do the next level of content. We got what I thought was most of the way through the game before I realized there was another like prestige layer. We go even deeper than we were going into like caves. And so each biome essentially has a second layer to go through.
Yeah.
Which we just did the first step of that, the Reaper, I think in the fire dungeon or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's, I didn't play a lot of Terraria. I played maybe 20, 30 hours, enough to get a feel for it. I like this better. That's all personal preference.
Sure.
I just prefer the kind of top down, bullet heaven style thing. I guess it's more of a bullet hell because you are shooting, but the bosses are very much like
it's a bullet hell scenario. Yeah.
And it's nice, finding new resources. Okay, what can I make with this? And one minor thing I do like, for the most part, is that a lot of the armor and weapon sets, they're side grades. They're not necessarily just make this one and it's better than the last one you had.
It gives you some agency.
There are tiers.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, other than that, when it comes like the RimWorld colony management, I think it's got a good structure there. There's really not much for them to do other than make you better buff food.
Yeah.
You can have them make any item that you could make in the game. You could have them churning out blocks to make different buildings and whatnot. But again, because the game's like 40 to 60% done, in my opinion, 90% of the base building is cosmetic.
Yeah.
I don't even know if like the walls have different hit points depending on their material. Your base does get rated the more colony members you have in your colony and or your progress through the bosses. I'm not sure which is the case, but they have been getting harder.
Yeah.
But again, it's one of those games that if it was a single player, I might have spent 5-10 hours one night, maybe 2 playing it. But because we're playing a multiplayer, which has been working for the most part pretty well.
Yeah.
A few minor disconnects.
Yeah. I'm honestly, I just expect that in multiplayer experiences for the most part.
It's nice. And there is definitely scaling. The bosses seem to just, double their hit points for every other person that joins with 3 people. A 5K boss was at 15K.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of them, they're hard, at recommendation, looking at the Reddit, I did bump up the difficulty in a few areas by 1 level, knowing that they said, if you're competent, like don't play this on normal difficulty. It's going to be too boring. And if it was any easier, I probably would have gotten a little bored.
Yeah.
But yeah, the grind's not super heavy. And again, I feel like really what this game just needs more now is probably a minor overhaul of the gameplay loop. It could use some more variety.
Yeah, sure.
There are some niggling balance issues. Like one of the dungeons I went into recently solo, just grinding out some resources for us. Playing solo, even with the trinkets with reduced mob spawns, you can see them on Twitch here dropping torches. I get like 1 torch in and have to stop and fight for like 30 seconds as mobs just kept coming out of the darkness. And then I'd get 10 more feet in to drop another torch and more mobs. It was just a grind fest. So, those kinds of things, they can be fixed. And it's one developer, I think, especially for one developer, one person done a really good job. All parts of this game seem to be kind of equally in step with each other. There's no one area besides maybe the sound could use some work, but honestly, it's not a super pretty game, but it's not. It works for what it is.
I don't have any complaints about the graphics. I did it first. I was like, man, I could have done a better job. But at the end of the day, the style matches throughout. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time nitpicking when at the end of the day, it is a single developer or a very small developer team.
It does
And
have kind of a RimWorld look to it, though.
yeah, and it's essentially, it's not. Would you? Well, I guess it's 2-dimensional voxel. Yeah.
I mean, if anything,
voxel
I
plane.
wouldn't be surprised if someone thought this was a Super Nintendo game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
no,
Like
yeah.
it looks like a Super Nintendo game. It
Yeah.
almost kind of plays like one
Yeah.
too.
Definitely.
Um,
So far, my experience has been that I really do enjoy it. As far as variety goes, there's a few things, and I'm gonna address Russ here in the chat as well. He says more weapon/attack/spell variety per tier, and the ability to upgrade the ones you like as the difficulty increases. I think that is needed. As far as variety, I'd like to see more variety in monsters, because you can essentially like vampire is 1 AI, zombie is 1 AI, and then like
yeah, a lot of them are just simple beeline it towards the player.
and yeah,
Right. The vampire was a little different, that it kind of flew around as a bat.
right.
I've noticed some monsters have dashes,
Yeah.
which is fine. But like what Russ was talking about, I didn't want to nitpick the game too much, but given that almost every weapon in this game has a unique attack animation, I wish that the base underlying numerics of the weapons, how much damage they did in their DPS and all that, scaled off something entirely different.
Yeah.
I'd love to say like this weapon, animation and its attack pattern that I got early game, I absolutely love. I wish I could just upgrade it and keep it through the game. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Because I found some weapons, I'm like, this is awesome, but then the damage starts to fall off,
Right.
and it's like, nah, I got to switch to something else.
No, yeah, and well, you're preaching to the choir. I ran into that blood bolt
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Shoots 3 bolts at home and on
Well,
targets.
shoots.
It's
The first one is just a
easy mode.
single bolt. It can only bounce off of 2. It can only bounce 2 times off of objects, and it's a homing missile, as long as it's its pathing is near an enemy creature. Then I get an upgraded version of that where it shoots 3 missiles and will also bounce 2 additional times. So suddenly I have this.
You just flood the screen.
I'm flooding the screen with these bolts. And while they were never the most damage out of what we had amongst us in the group, in a group environment, it made a lot of sense because it had solid knockback. It illuminated further through the hallways than our torches did. And it hit multiple creatures. And if every bolt hit a single creature, it did a respectable amount of damage. So essentially we were looking at, like, by the time it got to the front, the front of the party, which is Nick and Russ, these things were like half dead. So they were relatively easy to dispatch and maintain, our health pools. So it while I think it played a role not being the most damage, it did help in like a support capacity. We've gone a couple tiers up since then, and I was still using the same thing. And while, it still played its role, the amount of health that I was, the damage that I was doing to enemies, I just couldn't justify using it any longer. It became, especially when soloing, it became too difficult.
Too much drop off.
Yeah, too much. No, it just wasn't doing enough DPS. At the end of the day, I was having to run around too much, kiting bad guys and stuff. So
I have other things I could say as far as nitpicking goes, but I do want to give it some praises.
Yes.
Off the bat, its inventory management and colony inventory management it's modern. Like they have everything in your inventory that is in a chest nearby. You click a button and it will take all the stuff from your inventory and put it into the chests where they need to go. Yeah. And vice versa. If you want to restock your food or ammo into your inventory from chests, single button to do that. All kinds of sorting methods, ability to lock stuff. That part of the user interface is really well done.
Really well done.
There's another thing I was going to say. The grind isn't really that bad because there's so many unique areas. It takes maybe an hour or 2 in one zone before you feel like you've gotten everything you need out of it.
Yeah.
Which is nice. And the last thing, the idea of the summons, you can have, there's 4 categories of weapon: melee, range, magic, and summons. We realized pretty quickly that any quote unquote build, if you could call them that, can fit summons in, and you can have, melee summons that fly and swarm a target to summons that are ranged that shoot lasers. I recently got one that goes over and circles a target and just shoots lasers at it. And it's like, that's neat. Give me more of that. I'd love to see a summon that defends you, like a shield or whatnot. Because again, being this is a bullet hell, There are a few active trinkets, dodges, teleports, and the like run fast. There is a shield, which you can activate to take reduced damage all the way up to like the later ones where you take no damage. But you have to be so mobile in this game to not get insta-gibbed that it just works against itself.
Yeah.
So more work towards making some kind of melee tanky build, I think would go a long ways. And the last thing I want to say is all this stuff. I might even throw this into the Discord, the link to this podcast. It's one guy. He says in the game, like, if you have feedback, let me know. Cause like I can't make the game better if we don't hear it.
Totally.
So I think this could end up being a really good game given a year or two.
And while it sounds like we've been nitpicking the game, I'm having an immense amount of fun. I think this game is well made.
And it was $7, $6.
No, when I bought it, it was $1.49.
Okay, yeah,
it was.
I think I bought it for like
the winter sale.
$6.89.
It's actually on sale again for $6.69 right now, all the way until the 25th, or until the 3rd of April. I say especially under $10, which is its normal price, $9.99. I think it's a buy. Like at the end of the day,
got 30 hours in it.
Yeah, I don't
$10.
think you can go wrong with this game. I think at this particular price point, it's a no-brainer. I think anybody can have fun in this game. Let's address Russ real quick because he's been giving us he's here, he's joining our podcast about Guardians of the Galaxy. He says Josh is wrong. This game didn't need any progression options. Just play a game for the story they intend to tell. Not every game needs open world mechanics. And he says that's kind of my point. Not having open world mechanics shouldn't be considered a negative. It's just a different game. And that was in response to what I had to say about the game and its mechanics. He said shouldn't be considered a negative. It's just a different game. I also think the game length is good considering it went on too much longer. It wouldn't have been detrimentally boring.
I'm not reading.
Are we talking about Necesse now?
Is that on purpose?
No, I mean,
what? Oh, I had to scroll up. Nick has been, or Russ has been talking to us for quite a while.
What was he saying about Necesse?
So I read more weapon / attack / spell variety per tier and the ability to upgrade the ones you like as the difficulty increases. Your beard looks damn fine, Joshua. Good use of my blood. He says, I want to hoover crumbs out of that majestic mane. An additional activated ability would be nice.
Well, I mean, I don't know what my beard can do, but we could try activating it. I don't know that it had one ability, but a second one would be cool.
That was Necesse. The ability. That's
and he's trying to confuse us here.
No, you asked for Necesse, and I gave you Necesse.
Oh, I thought we were talking about my beard still.
Oh, so the additional activated ability, that's about Necesse.
It's not true. Its first power is to tickle thighs.
Okay.
But he also says he is having fun playing.
Yeah. I mean, we've got 4 or 5 nights worth of playing it. So yeah, I mean, again, once you get this cheap, like if it interests you at all and you have the money, just give it a shot. And if you can play it with other people, do it. Like it's one of those games that's a lot more fun multiplayer.
Yeah, definitely.
Under $10, man. And you guys have what, 30, 40 hours into it?
I think you'd really like it. And I kind of wish you'd gotten on the train. I know you were busy, but like the RimWorld stuff, it's there. It's bare bones, but it's kind of nice, like seeing like, oh, I know how to do this.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I set up, okay, go farm the crops, turn that into food and all that. But yeah, they can make ammo for you. And there are also vendors, which I thought was neat that you like your NPC vendors for buying and selling the more rare stuff. It just depends on who you've invited to your show.
And then villagers, they have their own, not only inventory, but they have their own sales. Like they are still vendors.
One other thing is the game's got full fucking mod support, apparently.
Oh,
There's
shit.
people making like base defense mods and adding new weapons. And it's like, the game's not even out fully. And it's got full mod support.
That's the lifeblood of any game, y'all. And the number one reason you should switch to PC gaming is the mods.
Yeah.
Consoles are starting to get there, but they're way behind.
They are.
Another 10 years, maybe.
I mean, at least they're getting marketplaces for them. That's good.
Yeah.
Russ
what else
says
we got?
It's nice that there isn't really a harsh punishment for dying. That would have been less fun. Yes.
I also set that.
Yeah.
There was 4 or 5 options for death. I set it to drop materials, which is like the stuff you gather in the dungeon. I think the default was dropping your inventory.
That would have made this game nearly impossible.
That's Minecraft's default.
Yeah,
and that's
for sure.
what they're basing it off of. But having to go get your weapons back,
that
would not have been fun.
No.
I don't think it drops your armor.
Okay.
But
like when you say drops, it means like you can go run over and grab it.
Yeah, where you die, all your stuff just
Yeah.
bloops out of you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's.
But the way I have it set
inconvenient.
it, that like the iron ore that you mined gets dropped, but you just go get it again.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, sure.
I think the last thing, praise, I do like the mechanic that if you're fighting a boss, you've activated a boss, if all the players in the arena die after about 3 seconds, the boss despawns.
Yeah.
Which means that there's really no way to easily cheese the boss other than like, I was thinking 2 of us could go in there while a third person waits for one of them to be about to die.
And we could
then
cycle them out.
start a rotation.
Even
But
then,
even that, like,
even then, I mean, we've wiped
kinda did
during
that,
boss encounters. Yeah, we've already done that by one person just staying alive, you know, managing the fight. So, yeah, I mean, I guess we could have a system there, but I think that's just as likely to fail as all 3 of us jumping into the encounter at the same time.
really simple, easy way that they made the bosses ramp in difficulty is their animations and attacks just get faster.
Yeah.
Like they have, you know, a definitely handful of things, but it's nice because it doesn't mean that like if you get hit once, you're going to drop because the boss does more damage. It just means that there's a lot more bullets on screen. So your skill in dodging needs to get up. But again, that gets back to like the melee build. I'd love to see some kind of like reflect shield or,
Yeah.
you know, dash to an ally to defend them or something, but that might be too much. I don't know. Anyways,
those are all things to consider, right?
Yeah.
So 100%. So as far as what's next, do we want to talk about Sons of the Forest now? We're running a little bit long already. We're actually running quite a bit long already. Or do we want to talk about Sons of the Forest next week?
I have very little to say about the game. I don't know about you guys, but I could literally sum my opinions on in like 30 seconds.
I think that I could too, but I doubt it. I'm
What do you think?
thinking of more.
I mean, I could say a little bit. I probably accidentally waxed poetic for a minute, but
Yeah.
Let's just wait then.
Yeah, let's wait until next week. We can talk about it next week. It's fine.
I screamed a lot.
You did scream a lot, but we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah.
So, guys, make sure you're here next week. We're going to talk about Sons of the Forest. We'll have, of course, more gaming news for you and etc. Make sure you're here next week. Hopefully by then I'll have the new layout up. I showed chat a little preview of that earlier. I think it's going to be a little bit more fun, visually exciting, and hopefully I'm able to integrate some
Space watches.
fun Twitch stuff for the live stream audience to interact with us with. So
That'd be neat.
hang on tight for those things to be implemented. At the very least, I plan to have the new layout set up for you guys. So we're also going to have new stuff in the merch store. Make sure you check out, whether you listen to it in audio or video, check out podcast players. We're everywhere. We're on Twitch Wednesday nights, 8 or later
.com.
PM Pacific.
PM.
Check out the YouTube channel at Video Game Tango and check out videogametango.com. All of it's there. Everything that's Video Game Tango related happens to be at videogametango.com. So check all those
Convenient.
things, click like stuff, subscribe stuff, and do other stuff. And we really appreciate you guys for being here and listening to us. You guys want to say something before we go?
Something before we go.
We're glad to be back.
We're glad to be back.